Hi, this is Ross Payne here with Role Playing Public Radio, and this is episode 52, Holiday Dash. And with me, of course, is Tom and special guest RJ. So,
yes, we're here.
A woo girl, apparently.
Oh, yeah. So this episode, we're going to be talking about the holidays. It's a mad dash, trying to get presents and everything else like that. So what
Topical.
better? Yeah, topical. So
Topical.
I know. What better time than to discuss chase scenes and running around and pacing in chase scenes? Actually, Ian Moody, who did the art for the New World and a lot of other good stuff, RPPR, suggested that because he was having problems with his Mask and I or Lothotep campaign. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, book just fell over.
A book just fell over.
I know.
How random was that?
So anyways, got a little bit of RPPR news. The RPPR Ruins of Lemuria ransom is still underway. So if you haven't contributed now, go ahead and do so. We
Become part of history.
Yes, everybody wins if the ransom is met. We for $20 you get 10 preview actual play episodes. For $25 you can get a seat at a Skype game that I run, and RJ and Cody or other RPPR regulars might show up depending on their schedule and
whether we got the balls to show up. Are you a bad enough dude to come to the game, RJ?
Well, I sweetened the pot, as it were. I mean, I added to it. I said that if you donated over $75, in addition to a game Ross run, I will also run a game of your choosing.
Yeah.
And that goes for the $100 as well. So if you get up in those upper tiers, not only do you get one game, you get 2 Skype games, plus the preview episodes, plus the swag, plus, I don't know, say hi to your girlfriend. Like, what do you want from us? What do you want?
We're capitalists. We will do anything for money because that is how capitalism works.
We could record an answering machine message for you.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like, I am Ross Payton. You've not reached me yet.
I'm a famous author, but you haven't reached this guy's phone.
Welcome to Tom Church's voicemail. I'm Ross Payton. I'll take a message.
Apparently, that's how I talk. I mean, it's uncanny,
dude. It is uncanny. It's like listening to a recording of you.
I know. It's just ridiculous. So this other news, we took some photos of the game we played last night, which was Andrew's Fortune Part 2. We finished that off.
I am not Aaron.
RJ
is not Aaron. No.
I love you, Aaron, but I'm not you.
So I put those on the RPPR Facebook page, and I'll have a link to that. So if you haven't liked us on Facebook, I mean, then
well, first of all, you're wrong.
Yeah, you should like us on Facebook because that's important.
We just want to be liked.
Yeah,
we're not asking a lot,
and you can see what the RPPR gaming table is like.
It's so big.
I know, apparently.
And there's no creepy little light bulb just dangling.
Yeah, somebody had a great comment, which is like, I pictured a room that was in darkness except for a single bare light bulb swinging above.
Like, we did that for a while, but light bulbs are expensive to replace, and when they're swinging like that, they, hit shit. So we stopped.
So,
it is a toilet, though.
Yeah. I live in a cesspool of evil and filth and despair. So
why aren't there more pictures of all the glorious RPP art that surrounds the table, like our wonderful 6.5 foot tall Lenin poster?
Yeah,
you're gonna talk about we're capitalists, but I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I do have a giant poster of
Comrade Lenin's a gamer.
He is.
He is.
I will take a photo of that for the next session. Get some more angles of that and try and actually not get them all blurry and crappy.
And of course, and the paintings I keep hitting every single night I'm here.
Yeah, that's from Robert E. Smith, a renowned outsider artist who's native to Springfield and painting murals and was actually kind of a well-known artist. But anyways, and he was also a bit out there, kind of. If you know what outside art is, that's all crazy people making art. So anyway. Back to the main topic, which would be chase scenes. So, chase scenes, they're very important. I mean, most game scenes are usually either combat or talking to NPCs, but chase scenes are a very important part of any really fun game, especially action games. But the dilemma is here. Chase scenes are meant to be exciting and fast to simulate, what it's like to be being chased or chasing someone. But the problem is this conflicts with pretty much all rule systems are. If you run them as written, they kind of slow you down, especially in a chase scene.
D&D combat particularly comes to mind.
Right. Well,
the game it never seems to be slower than when we're in a combat session.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, 6 seconds or a minute of combat will take 20 minutes, an hour to process, and that's not very exciting. I mean, it's very fun from a tactical point of view, but what works for combat doesn't work for chase scenes. So how do you run a good chase scene? How do you? So we came up with some ideas for that.
One is a shot clock, like in speed chess.
Yeah.
And you tap in and then tap out, and you're just going to go as fast and as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Or if you don't have one of those, simply just enforce you got a limited time to think of what you're going to do, and if you don't think you're too busy thinking.
Right.
Move on.
I mean, that's very good. You can't that would kill it more than anything else, is if you allow the players unlimited time to decide what they're going to do. Now another thing is, like I mentioned earlier, Ian Moody gave me the idea for this topic because he was running Masks of Nyarlathotep, which is a Call of Cthulhu campaign, 1920s. It's a great campaign. I've run it myself. And he had a chase scene where the players were in Hong Kong, or they were in Shanghai, and Chthonian came out of the ground and started chasing them. And I was like, holy shit, that's a great scene, running through crowded streets of the Chinese city, being chased by a giant ass fucking monster. But his problem was it wasn't very exciting because it was, okay, make another, athletics check to keep running. Make another check to keep, not die. What are you going to do now? It was a very linear thing. Just make these skill checks to not die from the monster. So what I suggested to him was that he should have added more decisions. Instead of giving the players one or two options, go left or go right, give them 6 options. Do you knock over the cards? Do you
do you go up the fire escape?
To get to the roofs, get higher. The monsters from coming up from the ground. Maybe you want to get some height.
And that's where you can bring environment into play in that, because a good successful chase scene is not a straight line run or a dodge, duck, dip, dive, and weave type scenario. A successful chase scene will incorporate the environment. Sometimes a car will slide into you because it didn't see that you had the green light, or maybe you're running a red light. Mm-hmm. If you look at chase scenes in movies for inspiration, you'll see that the action is cut up into chunks. That any chase scene is really a chase sequence, and that's one of the ways in which you can bring speed back by introducing different scenarios into the mix.
And actually, one movie in particular that I think had a great chase scene in it was The Rock.
Oh, yeah?
When Sean Connery's escaped from the hotel, driving through San Francisco, because he uses the environment like crazy.
Yeah, during San Francisco. I mean,
and that's something else. You really got to know what's around you.
Right.
More scenes than not. I mean, a chase scene has to be fast, but you also have to make sure you know exactly what's around you.
Well, I mean,
and where you are,
right? The positioning is very important. I mean, the problem about the environment is you can go into too much detail. I would suggest you're this type of area. Here are a few specific details, and the players will fill it in mentally themselves. And if they have a question about it, they'll ask you, "Oh, there's a cart full of oranges nearby that I can tip over?"
To which there is,
are there two guys walking with a plate glass window that I can?
Which is it's well, I aim for them. I know it's part of the chase, but I must hit this.
Yes, exactly.
And again, you can go back to movies for that example, because environment can cause too much detail. But when you're looking at a chase scene, there's often long stretches where you're sort of in the car, and that can be your players making their decisions and talking and doing that. And really, the camera only goes outside of that when all of a sudden the environment comes into play. So you don't need to go bonzo gonker, or I can't speak. You don't need to go crazy on the environmental detail, but when it's appropriate for it to come in and make it, again, that sequence, then that's when it should come into play.
Well, I think also one thing that's different about games and movies and chase scenes in particular is in movies, obviously, there's only one goal, and that's easily established. Usually it's to get this guy or to get away from these people, but players can establish their own goals. Now, for example, in the Masks of Nyarlathotep scene, the players could have made their goal to get away, to not die. If they were more ambitious, it'd be like, well, we can try and kill the monster. The Chthonians are afraid of water. We can lure it to the docks and drown it.
Or if you're running along the rooftop, hey, there's a water tower on the roof.
Yeah, exactly. Or better yet, wait, we know there's an enemy cult nearby. Let's lure the Chthonians to their headquarters and kill them. So be sure to present them with lots of different options so that they can try and decide what they want to accomplish in this chase. Because then, if you have giant monster fighting evil cult, hey, that's great. I mean, if you're...
And you never know when it's going to be a good time to use your dynamite and Thompson submachine guns, because in Call of Cthulhu, you have those.
Yeah.
Always.
Pretty much. But another, one great chasing I saw was actually Ong Bak or was it Ong Bak 2, where the guy is chasing through. It's a very a martial arts movie, but the guy is incredibly acrobatic, and he's jumping through bales of wire that are being carried by people.
A fantastic movie if you haven't seen it, by the way.
Yeah, like a lot of parkour stuff.
I would characterize it as that. And again, it makes use of the environment and creative decision making, because I think halfway in the great chase scenes, the goals change halfway through. Like the players think they're being chased, and then they realize, oh wait, the bad guys have what we want. We need to go chase them. Or the bad guys grab the MacGuffin, and the hunter becomes the hunted, and vice versa. That kind of thing. So
Then again, chases also don't have to go to breakneck speed all the time.
right.
Like another good chase scene is in Die Hard,
Right.
when they're chasing him on the roof.
Right.
I mean, that goes from this running across the roof, shooting, to sneaking by in an air vent, trying to avoid them.
Right.
Chases, they're not always warp speed down the street or train tracks or whatever.
That brings up a different point. The type of chase you have determines what kind of decisions the players will be able to make, and what kind of details in the environment they're going to notice. Like again, if they're on foot, especially if they're trying to hide and sneak away, it's going to be much slower, and they're going to have much more time to soak in the environment, figure out what information's there. But like in a car scene, especially if they're going 100 miles an hour, through a city, be like, okay, you get to a corner, you get to another corner, you get to an intersection. They're not going to see the lettering of the sign or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or I during my Gargoyles campaign, I actually had a chase scene on a bullet train. Mm-hmm. And if you're going 200 miles an hour on a train,
yeah,
that severely limits the ways in which you can move. I mean, that's a good way of using the environment to inform the kind of chase you have. And that's another thing. You can bring technology and outside information if you're prepared for something like a chase scene. We all have laptops. We all have computers. We all have access to Google Maps in some capacity. If you're old enough, you may even have some, I don't know what they call them, Thomas guides or some old printed maps. Those can be good ways of showing the environment and also sort of forcing players to make informed, better decisions, which means that your responses to those decisions can also be more informed.
Yeah. I think, technology can definitely help. I know I did a chasing for a Call of Cthulhu game that I ran over Skype, where I actually showed, you're on this bridge over a lake, in New Orleans, and, here's what's happening. So that kind of visual aid, because the biggest problem I've had aside from pacing and chase scenes, and I'm sure you guys had too, is positioning, or like figuring the players don't know where they are in relation. I think the key is they're in relation to the antagonist, who they're chasing or being chased by. We had this in the Caleb's game that last night. Tom was being chased by Cody's character. It was a car chase, and Cody thought he was on one side of the car and was going to shoot at Tom, but that would have it
would have endangered the MacGuffin in the seat with me,
right,
that he wanted.
Right,
he wanted me dead and the MacGuffin captured.
Right,
cars just stop. If you kill the driver, cars just come to a very slow, gentle stop. That's what we learned from the game last night.
Yeah, that was Cody's logic, that if you killed Tom, who was driving the car at great speeds, Chicago during winter,
Yeah, I'm not going to. My foot's not going to convulsively go on the gas, and
that kind of thing.
And that's the other thing from a mechanics perspective is, if you're doing a basic combat scene where it's in a temple, let's say, you can draw out a temple. You can move characters on a grid. Often one of the problems of a chase sequence is a chase sequence covers such a large distance that at a certain point you're just narrating it, you're just describing it, because you can't stop every 10 seconds to draw out the intersection, the hill that you're driving. You can't do that. It would slow gameplay to a crawl, which is the good idea of, if you have some prepared maps, if you have some atlases, if you have Google Maps, that can provide a quick visual reference in the same way that the game map can provide a quick visual reference to where things are in relation to one another.
Yeah. And again, I've seen some systems, I think Spycraft did it, to where you would just show them in relation to each other. Like it was assumed that they're blazing down the roads or streets or whatever, but this car was 10 squares behind that car, and the skill chase would be used if you could overtake them. So you would use the same grid, but you wouldn't have to draw out the map. You just say, all right, you're here, he's this far away. You can do this to try and speed up, or you can do this slow.
And that's useful if you don't. That's actually kind of useful if you don't know you're going to have a chase scene.
Right.
Sometimes they just happen.
Yeah, that's true. If you're doing an improvisation thing.
And that's something we don't talk about. That we are here at RPPR a big fan of tons and tons of different systems. We play a ton of different systems, and I know you guys on the forums play a ton of different systems. And if there's a chase sequence or any kind of rule system for something specific that works really well for you, there's no reason you can't pull that into the game. Because I believe the Spycraft one you're talking about, each successful skill check, you have the option of moving yourself a couple of squares closer to your pursuer, or falling back a couple of squares, or maybe trying to shake them if your skill check is high enough.
Right.
And something like that that's not in the rules of, say, D20 Modern, but is easily adaptable to the rules of D20 Modern or whatever your particular game is, can be very helpful in using mechanics and measured balance mechanics to help, again, the way in which your chase scene is run.
And again, that also ties into giving them plenty of decisions. Like in a car chase, you're like, well, I have to catch up with the guy. Well, how are you going to do that? Are you just going to gun your engines and hope you don't overheat? Or are you going to try and cut across and cut them off at the pass,
or use traffic to your advantage?
Or use traffic, yeah. Again, going back to the environment, you should have the rules should be there to provide multiple options. But one thing is, we talked about simplifying the rules, and I think one of the best ways to do that is to cut down the number of dice rolls you have to make. I know, and sometimes I've heard of games where, not just chase scenes, where players had to make rolls to roll up the stairs. I think it's like a roll master system, which is ridiculously complex if you ever looked at roll master.
No.
But
No.
you had to make maneuver checks. Yeah, it was very tedious. So
I didn't pass my breathing check this round.
You'd be surprised. Rollmaster is pretty infamous.
My oxygen absorption check was insufficient, and my kidneys are failing.
I think I missed my ass when I was wiping it.
It's a fantasy system, but they have a critical hit table for plasma weapons. Apparently, there was plasma type magic or magical creatures or whatever. So it was very complex.
An enchanted plasma rifle, Ross.
I guess. But that's just sort of illustrate a point. Is you don't want to have too many dice rolls in a chase scene. You could have somebody like, the bridge is going up, and I'm running across. I'm gonna jump across and climb over the top. Well, okay.
Yeah. You don't want to have I need 4 athletics checks for the whole length of the bridge.
Yeah.
Then you're gonna have to roll your acrobatics, leap over it, and then I need you to make another one for the landing, and then I need you to make
climb check to climb up.
Eventually you're like, oh wow, this is exciting, massive, sound of die rolling. Yay, we are chasing.
So, yeah.
And the other thing is you can sort of, going back to what we just said, you can sort of play a little fast and loose with physics. That's something that makes a great chase scene. You can plow through the glass and not have it slow you down significantly. You can ramp the curb and not immediately flip over and burst into flames or whatever things would. Because if it's just a straight chase, at a certain point, I fully expect your rules lawyer player, and you all knew there is one, to be like, well, my car is this car, and it has this engine with this number of horsepower. Even if we were both flat out gunning it, the car behind me in no way could catch me, blah blah blah. And that's not fun. So you need to sort of play within the rules, and traffic needs to slow down, and if you need to play a little fast and loose with the physics of the world, that's fine. The rules should be there to help you do that.
Yeah. Of course, it also depends on the genre you're playing. If you're playing a very realistic, gritty, sort of simulated, where gunshot wounds cripple or kill characters. You don't want to get too cinematic with like a survival horror game where you'd be like, oh, well, I, gun the engines and kill Cthulhu with this, my flaming pickup truck.
Make a dice check to see how much gas you still have in your car.
Exactly.
When was the last time the oil was changed? Roll a die 100.
There we go.
What are you talking about? You only fill a car up with gas when it's cinematic and exciting to do so.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't get premium, so your car is not going to be able to do that. And what type of oil did you get? Yeah, cheap gas.
10W30. You didn't get 10W30. Yeah. You didn't get Pennzoil, did you?
Oh my God.
Plug.
Yeah. Where's the check in the mail? Pennzoil. The way I think of it is a good chase scene should be like a fast-paced maze where you're branching through these different decisions. Each one represents a different path, and you have to keep moving, otherwise you'll fail. And if you do that, then you achieve whatever goal you're trying to. But that's a key thing is you have to keep players on edge. You have to keep them wary and unbalanced, and can't give them time to recover, because the chase scene should be exciting, should be tense. It should be a highlight of game, not like some tedious, confusing mess of rules where you're not sure what happens, or like, I don't know, and you have to spend 10 minutes looking at it. And that's, I don't know, that's been my experience with a lot of chase scenes in games, is that they tend to become very linear, like, you know, you make your checks and you get away, or very, you know, tedious and boring. So,
well, that's also DM and player check. I mean, at a certain point, if you know that you're going to be running a chase scene for this game, then maybe you should not only pre-hand refresh your rules on the driving and chase scene mechanics, but also maybe make a printout of it, so that if someone's going to argue with it, instead of, well, turn to page 147, and action grinds to a halt as they, do you have the book? Hand me the book. Let me turn the page. Let me read it. Then that you can just hand this to them and, here, read this right, and then move on from there. That's part of being a good DM.
yeah. But
Ross.
I know. I'm just
Oh, no, you didn't.
Well, we all know I'm a horrible DM because I don't let players mind control others.
I am Ross Payton. Yeah. I am a published author. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, and I don't let you control other players with diplomacy skills. So you know.
You're a monster.
I
Ross.
know I am, but I think the thing is that chase scenes are, even for a good GM, they can be very challenging because they're sort of unusual. Rules, you know, have a lot of, like, usually systems will have a lot of space devoted towards combat and a good amount of stuff for social interaction, social skills now, you know, social combat and that kind of thing. But there's, you know, outside of like espionage, specialized systems like spycraft, there's not much page count or help towards car chase scenes or, you know, chase scenes.
And a lot of chase scenes got the same problems as any other scene. I've had a chase scene where I actually planned this to be a really dramatic, you know, climactic moment. And of course, then I should have remember, the players, of course, did the same thing I always do. Like, oh, we're in a car. Yeah, shoot out their tires.
Okay.
Like, and there's like 4 cars chasing them. I blow out all the tires of all 4 cars. Well, and of course, since his handgun skill was maxed out to the point of absurdity.
Okay.
There's no way he could have missed. So, okay, well and of course, you know, I roll as a GM, which is not nearly as good as I roll as a player, which I know is hard to believe, isn't it?
It is. I know Cody was disbelieving. You'd rolled to disbelieve if you did those rolls.
But of course, and in a matter of like 5 minutes of actual time, all 4 pursuit cars were gone.
Yeah.
To which, if you want to make that keep going, you gotta improvise.
Yeah, for me that would be easy. Like they've the bad guys have the world's fastest M. Abrams tank, you know, chasing them. So like, yeah, shoot out the treads. Go ahead with your little pistol.
I do remember the way I solved that. I might have done it overboard flying. Like, the last thug comes in a Harrier jump jet chasing them.
Well, I shoot these engines out. I have maxed handgun skill. I can shoot anything.
In what would you do? DMing, I think I would, while he was focusing on shooting out the tires, have the car hit like a speed bump, and since he was focusing on shooting, he gets lost out of the car. He falls out of the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it turns out the Harrier was a much more exciting resolution to it because I said, dude, you have a 9mm. You're not going to shoot out the engines of a Harrier jump jet.
And shot down. All right. There
Physics issue. If you were to somehow clog the engines of the...
Yeah.
It's shooting a Gatling gun at you.
Yeah.
Deal.
Deal with it. I'll shoot the bullets. I have max handgun skill. I can do anything.
Well, how many rounds do you have left? 9?
Yeah.
Oh, and they're shooting 800 rounds at you. Sucks to be you.
So one of the additional ways that you can speed up, we've talked a lot about the mechanics of how to make a chase scene better from a rules perspective, but also because a chase scene has to be bam, 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 and it's this whole sequence of events, you can kind of determine that there's probably going to be in any good chase sequence somewhere between 5 and maybe 15 to 20 really good dice rolls that are the things, just so that it's not a narrative, but so that, you know, there's a little bit of randomization and there's a skill aspect to it. We don't talk a lot about pre-rolling because people aren't a fan of pre-rolling, but one of the huge areas I'm a fan of pre-rolling is for a chase sequence. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. You can say an arbitrary number, say 10 in this 5 to 15 scenario. Roll out 10 die 20s and write down the order in which those are. And as those skill checks come up, then you just get that. And that, instead of slowing down everything to do the nuts and bolts, guts, mechanics of whatever system you're running, you can already have that good to go. So the player can just look down and go, I got a 12, I got a 17. And you can move forward to that. The other way you can do that is you can do the same pre-rolling, and in, say, 10 spaces, you can see that they're going to have some good rolls and some high rolls, and you can allow them, and this is where you get into some more tactical thinking in the chase sequence, to decide where they're going to assign their die rolls. With that, you might want to restrict the die rolls to a smaller pool, but again, that option is going to end up helping your players and hurting your players, and will make your chase scene a little more interesting.
I gotcha. One thing I realized is we haven't talked about, we're talking about pure chasing. So we've mentioned about, shooting tires out. But we haven't talked about like sort of combination scenes where they're combat and a chase scene, or a skill check, skill challenge type scene with a car chase.
I sense math being involved in this.
Well, it kind of depends. I mean, if you think about it, like, obviously the ending of the Road Warrior, Mad Max, is basically not just a chase scene, but a fucking huge ass battle, and it involved like characters jumping to other vehicles, getting on board, jumping back, and that sort of thing. And
the infamous train scene, you're going to end up on the roof of the train at some point. And you're going to end up fist fighting on the roof of a speeding train after you've just chased them through the train. It's going to happen.
And at some point, you're going to see the bridge coming up, but your opponent's back will be to it. And you just duck down.
Yeah. And then he'll look at you, and then he'll look just at the wrong moment.
By the way, DMs, if you can manage to kill a player by having them not be aware of looking around and just getting pulpitated by whatever tunnel they're going through, kudos to you.
Yeah.
Is pulpitated an actual word?
It should
now.
be. It should be. That's an obvious thing. Now, the key is there. Obviously, combat is probably the most complex type of interaction between PCs and NPCs. How do I put my bullet into your head and that kind of thing? The question is how complex can you make it? What do you do? Like, when you run a chase combat scene, like, typically I run it as a combat with some modifiers, like some special challenges. If they're on board a moving vehicle, then there's basically I lay out the train and then say, okay, if you get to these squares, you fall off, and that's bad. Or every other round, there's going to be a sign coming past, so you have to go prone or something like that. Or I'd make it a random check. But what have you guys done when you've run a game like with the combat chasing?
Well, one of the things you can do is you can sort of combine these issues. Same drive check type mechanic. If you've got someone in Tom's crazy shoot out everything but the Harrier game, if you've got someone who's trying to shoot at tires on cars behind them, that's really hard to do if the car is coming straight at you. So your driver's going to need to help you out with that. He's going to need to get you to the side. He's going to need to swerve. So that seems to me to be a very simple example of make a drive check to assist. And depending on if the roll succeeds or fails, that should impose a penalty or a bonus to their ability to do so.
That's a very good point. It's a team effort, especially if all the players are on one vehicle or something like that being chased. Starship combat,
or even
chasing.
two. You can box in vehicles.
Yeah.
You can defensive driving. If it's a chase scene over a long period of distance, can I keep up with them? What if my car starts to fail? And am I noticing because I'm so focused on my own chasing? There's notice checks, there's performance checks, there's teamwork checks, there's giving bonuses to other players. Again, these things can all sort of come into play.
And on foot chases, there's always the obligatory distraction. Hey, look over here, and you run off in one direction while the player with the MacGuffin runs away.
I mean, a great example is I had it wasn't there was a chase, but both players were in the cockpit of a fighter plane, and there's one person was in the pilot's seat controlling the weapons, the other guy was the Rio in the back in the the seat behind him, and his, basically using observation and equipment reading rolls to determine range and location of of the enemies you're fighting.
Right.
Which actually the person in the front wouldn't be very effective at all if it wasn't for his spotter basically.
Right. Basically. And I think it also extends beyond combat scenes too. You could also put in skill challenges, or even I would love to see diplomatic chase scenes. Where you're trying to convince somebody. I think of movies like there's the police are trying to protect an informant, and the informant doesn't want to talk, and then they're being chased by gangsters. Will you help us out? Tell us where the bomb is. Tell us where this is, and you have to talk the person down while you're being chased and shot at by gangsters.
Or the movies where I think the first Dirty Harry movie, when he's getting the instructions to run around to different payphones all over the city, and the whole time, and every time he does, he's talking to the same insane sniper.
Right. So yeah, there's a lot of options there.
Under that same diplomatic chase scene you're just talking about, again, the environment and the driving checks and all those things can play either a bonus or a penalty role in what's going on. If your guy's just about to talk, but then you hit a speed bump or get slammed into by another car and he gets knocked around and his head goes unconscious, then you have to get back there and treat him. And I mean, these are all different things that can come into play and either make your players happy or make your players' lives more difficult.
Yeah. And yeah, but another thing I was thinking of was speed, actually, because that's actually, it's a chasing without being chased, like they have to keep going at a certain speed, so it's like a chasing, but then they have the
reverse chase scene.
I know. Whoa. It's like Shalman, only was watchable.
And
this
good,
bus 55 miles an hour.
But it was like, the multiple skill challenges in order to disarm the bomb and also keep the people from panicking. And so there's diplomatic there.
Right. Or the scene when he's under the bus and she has to keep, the driver of the truck in front of him has to keep it steady.
Right.
She has to keep the bus steady.
Right.
And he has to, not die.
Exactly. So those are sort of the models you should look for, I think, for a good chasing. Now, one thing is also, the genre, it really depends on what type of chasings you're going to do. We talked about action movies, modern action stuff. That's obvious. We talk a lot about that. But I think you can have chasings in every type of genre, even ones you wouldn't think of. Obviously horror would be, the obvious one is, the monster chasing after the players. But you could also have the players chasing after a
witness
monster, or like the little girl who can exorcise the demon, but the MacGuffin person, while being chased by a monster. So you have that going on. What other genres?
Well, I mean, even from no matter what the genre, and again, I keep going back to it's more of a chase sequence than a chase scene, because a scene is something that has one cause and one effect, and you go from one thing and the thing wraps itself up inside of it. Now, sequence is a series of mini scenes. They're not quite scenes. They don't stand out on their own. They need what's before and what's after them to come into play. And a chase sequence should sort of follow that route. If you take any of the chase scenes we've talked about in any of these movies, there is the train example. You're on the train. You're chasing them from car to car. They duck out. Then they climb up the thing. So the person gets to the end car, sees they've lost him, climbs up the edge. The person is on top of the other thing. They have to jump from car to car. Then there's the hand fight on the car. They're getting close to the tunnel. They have to avoid what's going on in the tunnel. They have to get the piece of information. These are all specific things within the chase sequence. You can almost look at a chase sequence in a game as a game within a game. Not to overstate or oversell the point. Right. It's a mini game.
Yeah. It was also a thing we've also talked about in terms of dynamics is the typical chase of only two parties, one chasing after the other. I think there are some times where you want multiple parties, like a three-way chase.
The Mexican standoff.
Yeah, the Mexican standoff. But I mean, everybody's chasing after the same MacGuffin or the same item, or you have one person being chased.
It's a mad world. Or what was the recent remake of that? Breathing is important. What's
Rat Race.
Rat Race. Great example of that. That's a movie with 12 people chasing after one thing.
Or the movie Ronin.
Yeah,
Ronin. Yeah, there
that's
you go.
A great one.
So you have one target and then multiple chasers, or
Smoking Aces.
That's what happened in the game last night.
Yeah, exactly. So you have. So don't limit yourself to just one dynamic. There are a lot of different possible ways this can go. And another thing is, in terms of pacing, is there's the interrupted chase scene where the players get away. The obvious thing is like they get away from the bad guys. They hide away for a little while. They can bandage their wounds, but then they're discovered again. The chase scene picks back up.
So don't drop the tension. If there's the interrupted chase scene, then what's really important is that the tension doesn't drop. If you've gotten away from the mobsters, you're not immediately going, oh, everything's fine now. There's that moment. There's the 30 minutes afterwards where you got your eye on your shoulder, and as a GM, anything you can do to contribute to that, doors slamming,
red herrings,
flashes of light. Was that a camera flash? Things of that nature can contribute to the player's tension.
Yeah. And you can go a lot of different ways into this. We just realized, the best chase scenes you should look to for inspiration would obviously be the Bollywood chase scenes. I'm sure many of you have seen clips from YouTube of a guy sliding a horse under a trailer.
Something that a player would do in any game.
Yeah. They're literally insane. I mean, there's no other explanation for it. So, that's what I would love to.
Or
see.
I've actually seen the movie. Yeah, you remember the movie Duel?
No.
It's this guy's being chased by this truck.
Yeah,
the whole movie.
I mean, I'm aware of it.
And it's using everything we're talking about. There's times he gets away from it.
Yeah.
Seems to have a moment to relax, and then suddenly there it is again.
Yeah.
And you never see the driver of the truck. It's just him versus the truck the whole movie.
The last 30 minutes of Terminator 2, one of the best chase sequences of all time. And again, still with my little harping point of sequence, there's one thing after the other. There's climbing on the car, there's shotgun shells, he's in the truck, there's running the truck into the thing, and then there's a chase sequence through the hole, and then you trick the guy into falling into the fire. I mean, these are...
Right.
Hollywood books, there are tons of chase sequences in books. If you have not been finding some pulp noir novels, if you've not been looking at some terrible mystery novels, not the kind, but like the kind they sell at Walmart, like terrible things like that, there honestly is a lot of good inspiration in there.
Well, I think the thing is to be aware of, you read those, but remember, those are just one possible route.
Right.
What you need to do is, if you're doing like Terminator 2, is, when they start the chase at the Dyson plant, or no, what was it?
Cyberdyne Systems.
Cyberdynes, I'm sorry. Ask them how, they know that...
Well, first of all, which direction do you go?
Yeah, which direction do you go? And then how are you going to get there? And what are you going to do about the T-1000 on your ass? So they could have tried to take another helicopter nearby, or they could have taken, a different police vehicle, or they could have split up.
Or they could have gone downtown instead of to the industrial area.
Right, exactly. So...
no steel mills downtown.
I know. So there's so remember, those setups. That's what you need to do, but you need to give them more options. Don't just say, okay, you take the truck and you go to the steel mill.
Or hell, it could have been different. Like the T-1000 could have gotten to the stupid the bad pickup truck.
Yeah.
And they could have gotten the tanker truck full of liquid nitrogen.
Yeah, exactly. So you have a lot of different possibilities. But yeah, that's the kind of thing you need to look at. So. Whenever you are planning chase scenes or you're thinking of chase scenes, just remember to keep it fast. Give the players a lot of options. Don't let them rest too easy, and keep it fun. I mean, that's the important thing, obviously. So, and now since again holiday season, whenever you're in the mall, or look around and all the chaos around you, and just use that as inspiration.
Just think about being chased by a bunch of bad guys through the mall.
Yeah.
During Christmas,
pretty much. So, Tom. We do have shout-outs, and Tom does not have a letter this time, but we will have an anecdote.
Well, but wait, we got RJ here.
Yes, we have RJ. So RJ, if he has any anecdotes, we'll be right back. And we're back, talking about holiday stuff now. Shout-outs. So Christmas is around the corner.
Yeah.
We got a lot of stuff. I'm actually getting everyone in the RPPR group a gift. And what I'm doing is actually the first of our forum thread shout-outs is you all know the gaming company Palladium. They put out such great games as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness,
and
Robotech.
still put together their books manually.
Yeah. Laying out without a computer, just manual wax paper and all that. They have this thing in their store called the Grab Bag, where it's like for $30 or $40 you get $180 to $120 worth of product. Only they get to choose what it is. You can ask for certain things, but there's no guarantee. So I got one, and whatever I get, I will split up with the RPPR group, and I'll try and run a game. If they give me enough to actually run a game, I will run a game based on whatever random ass books they give me. So if we get Rifts and Rifts Australia and Rifts Mexico and Rifts Mystic Russia, we'll try and do something with all three of those. And yeah, so that will be fun. If they give me a coffee mug, I'm not sure how I'm going to use that in a game, but
you could break it dramatically.
yeah, it'll be a great prop. So next forum, so that's my Riffs experiment, so check that out. Then the next forum thread shout out is the junk mail novel, which I don't know if you know this, but spammers hit our forums, the comment sections quite a bit. And Cody and I have been posting excerpts of various spam comments we've gotten from Cody. Of course, has his blog Pop Gun Chaos, which is out there, and I, of course, on RPPR we get a lot of spam comments, so you can see the greatest spam nonsense ever written, or some of it. So, and then of course there's the Ruins of Lemuria Kickstarter thread, which has gotten a little bit derailed recently, but it's a lot about the Lemuria. If you have any questions about the Skype games that I'll be running as a reward for contributors, or anything about the PDF itself, let me know, and I'll be happy to post them.
You're going to give me a list of people I need to be running Skype games for?
When the ransom is concluded, yeah, of course.
Fantastic.
So yeah, RJ will be running, has promised to run games for people who contribute $75 or more. So take him up on that offer and go to the thread to ask to make requests, see what sort of games you would want him to run. He is, RJ, ARJE on the forum, so you can ask or message him there. So, with that in mind, why don't we talk about some shout-outs? What would be some good gift ideas for everybody? Tom, you mentioned some. So
yeah, most of mine are movies.
Yeah.
As you know, I have a somewhat unhealthy fixation for the 80s.
Yeah.
So I'll start with some of the movies I've recently picked up that I've really liked. Of course, starting in the 1980 is Airplane.
Yeah.
I picked up the special edition DVD of that.
Rest in peace, Leslie Nielsen.
Rest in peace, my friend. Yes.
Surely you can't be serious.
Don't call me Shirley.
Thank you. But yeah, it's got a bunch of interviews with the cast of the movie. Even it even shows the two kids who are doing the kid walking up with a tray of coffee, like, "Hello, I saw you sitting here. I thought you might like some coffee." To which he offers cream, and this 10-year-old girl's like, "No, thank you. I take it black, like my men."
Nice.
And it has these kids now grown up giving, or Peter Graves, who said that he was in a grocery store line, and there was some girl, some kid was looking at him like he recognized him, so he's leaned over like, "Do you like movies about gladiators?" And the kid freaks out and runs to his mom.
Nice.
But it's got stuff like that. But
Yeah.
also, Airplane is just a brilliant movie.
It is. And if you haven't seen it, you're a horrible person.
You should pray for death.
And you should feel bad.
And it was the first comedy movie that Leslie Nielsen ever did.
Wow. Interesting. So actually, my first shout out is an '80s movie as well. Not as well known, but it's called Angel Heart, and it's talking about Dirty World. It's a film noir / horror movie about a detective hired to find a crooner named Johnny Favorite, and it's set in 1955. But it stars as the detective is a young Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, Ross showed me video of this. That does not look like Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, the Mickey Rourke of 1987 looks nothing like the Iron Man 2 wrestler / the wrestler Mickey Rourke. I mean, I had to go to Wikipedia and make sure that there weren't two actors named Mickey Rourke.
Is he hot?
He's pretty good looking in the
Almost
1980s.
a little geeky though.
Yeah, no,
I'll have to check this out.
Yeah, no, he plays a really good sleazeball detective and a ladies' man, and he is. It's a great movie. It's just dripping with that atmosphere. It's very. It's like it's a Call of Cthulhu game. There's no actual Cthulhu mythos, but it gets the horror and the style down just right, and it's creepy as hell. Robert De Niro's in it as the client, the guy that the detective, the guy that hires the detective, and he is just fucking creepy as hell in the few scenes he's in. So it's out on DVD. It's just an amazing movie, and Mickey Rourke is like a different human being. I mean, he is not like the wrestler. It's scrawny too. He's not like the roided up, wrestler too. Anyways, yeah.
I have two movie shout-outs. One, again, from the 80s. Gets a lot of unfair comparisons to another movie that came out around the same time, and that is the movie that came out around the same time is The Lost Boys. I'm sure everyone here has seen The Lost Boys, but since vampires are super popular, there's a movie called Near Dark, which does the vampire movie unlike any other vampire movie you've ever seen, but extremely, extremely well. It's got Bill Paxton in it. It's got a very young Adrian Pasador of Heroes fame in it. It's a very good movie, and it'd actually be really good source material for a vampire or horror game of your own.
Lance Henriksen,
people.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Bishop himself.
Yeah. And it was directed by a woman who later directed The Hurt Locker, and I cannot think of her name.
Yes, I can't think of her name either. But seriously, Near Dark,
Yeah.
it's 80s vampire movie, came out around the same time as Lost Boys, and it's easily the superior of the two.
Oh, it is. It's an actual movie. I mean, like the scene in the bar. Oh my god.
It's called the shit kicker scene, and it's amazing.
Yeah. It's basically the world of darkness as it was meant to be.
Yeah. Definitely, for sure. And then my second one was
It's gothic punk.
My second movie is early 2000s movie. It's recently just became available on Netflix, and it used to be actually one of my favorite guilty pleasure movies, and that's a movie called Undercover Brother. It is a parody of like sort of blaxploitation films and films of that era. It's actually interesting. It's a historical footnote. It's the first movie to be developed and adapted from an internet property. So it will live on in infamy in media student books for that reason.
Denise Richards is in that, right?
Denise Richards is in that.
I can't remember the name of the guy. I can picture his face, but I can't remember.
It's without spoiling anything. It's like a comedy D&D game, like gone wrong. Like the parody aspect is very strong, but some of the things that happen in it, like the only way you can explain this is just they set out to have fun, and they did. And it's an enjoyable movie. You can watch it a couple of different times and catch something new each time. It was very funny. I highly recommend buying it. It's a very good film. If it might not be a great film, but it's a good film. So. Yeah. Undercover Brother.
You had another movie too.
Yep. This one is also from the 80s. This is one of my guilty pleasure movies. Is The Delta Force?
Okay.
Chuck Norris movie.
I thought that was 1979. Was it? Or
it might have been 1979.
No, this isn't Delta Farce with Larry the Cable Guy.
Fuck that. No. No. This. Well, I saw it in the 80s for the first time, and it's it's hostages hijacking Beirut. Arabs are evil, and
Soviets are evil.
Soviets are evil.
Yeah.
As God intended.
And it's just even for like in 80s movies, the military tech, and that's ridiculous, especially the motorcycles, which have built-in machine guns and rocket launchers on them.
Yeah.
And of course, it's Chuck.
Physics doesn't matter.
And Chuck Norris is utterly invincible in this as well.
Of course.
But also George Kennedy, who plays Leslie Nielsen's captain in The Naked Gun, is the commanding officer of the team.
Yeah. Nice.
So, slightly different roles
I
there.
haven't seen it in a long time. I don't remember all of it. It was Delta Force 2 that was in Vietnam, right?
No, Delta Force 2 was actually about a drug lord in Colombia.
What was the one where they rescued the POWs? Was that Delta Force?
No, that was Missing in Action.
Oh, okay. Sorry. How could I mix those up? I'm just...
Well, they're both Chuck Norris movies.
Yeah, shooting bad guys. Let's see, I have one other movie. This one's a very recent one, 2008. It's called Gangster's Paradise Jerusalem. It's a South African film about the rise of a crime boss. And it's very interesting because he doesn't deal drugs. He doesn't, it's not a pimp. What he does is the crime boss is named Lucky, and he takes his gang. He'll go to a slum building and collect rent for all the tenants, and then force the slum lord to lose his building because he doesn't get any money from it, and then he buys it out cheaply, when it forecloses, and it's considered a civil action in South Africa, so the cops can't go in and break up the gang. So it's an interesting movie to see the politics of South Africa, the rise and fall of a crime boss, and there were some good gunfight scenes between him and private security forces. It's just a fun, happy movie that's very, very violent. So yeah, you had one.
I have one more.
Yeah.
This I know for sure. This one is an 80s. The 80s remake of The Blob.
Yeah.
Now I was a fan. Not a fan, but I enjoyed the 1950s version. because the whole like the young people, only the young people can help stop this situation.
Well, of course.
But I like this one because it actually shows what happens when caustic blob of caustic slime actually kills and eats someone.
Because that's what we really want to know.
But yeah, it's
Happy holidays.
I know it's well
it is red, so I mean,
I'm sorry. That was the war on Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bill O'Reilly.
keeping us on the straight.
But especially when this one guy's pulled down the drain of a sink. It's ridiculous, but just look it up. The blob sink scene. It's there.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I don't doubt you. I mean, it sounds again.
And also
holiday cheer.
and this one,
Christmas cheer.
And they even kill kids in this movie.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
that's a sign.
Oh, the 1980s. Yeah. Was there anything you couldn't do?
I submit that there was not.
I would send a quick shout out to Fear the Boot. Thanks. They mentioned us in the latest episode. Especially they like us and they like our actual plays. So thanks again. You guys are great too. So
and
mention that.
I think there's like one more shout out.
Yeah.
It's
a couple more.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe a couple more, but
Yeah.
one in particular was Brian Regan.
Yeah.
Because we went to Tulsa last weekend to watch his new show.
Yeah.
And I like it. Every bit of the show was entirely new material. I
Yeah.
appreciate that very much. Brian Regan, very funny person.
Yeah, if you get a chance to see him, if he's coming to a city near you, it's a 2-hour thing, and it's well worth.
Yeah, his
the
brother
cost.
opens for him.
Yeah, his brother's a comedy writer too. Of course, he had a family of like 8 brothers and sisters, so like a very Irish Catholic family. So, anyways.
Unlike a lot of people, I didn't come to gaming later in life. I was blessed to be born into a nerd family. So I've been RPG gaming and doing other various kinds of gaming since I was, but a tot. And one of the Christmas traditions in my family is that every year my dad will buy, a cheap 10, 15, maybe $20 game. One of the ones, not like a board game, but one of the ones like maybe from Slugfest, Kung Fu Fighting or Flux or any of those, just quick pick them up and play. You can teach them to friends or family in one sitting type games. And I'll put that in my stocking. So after the Christmas presents are open and we go open up the stockings, there's usually a game. I even got Canasta one year. I know how to play Canasta. Apparently I'm 85. But I highly recommend that you check out some of these other game.
You know how to play Mahjong?
I do.
Then you're definitely 85.
Chinese checkers, the whole thing. But yeah, one of the things
Shuffleboard?
I recommend is if you're going to support your local game shop, which we at RPPR are fans of, is a lot of these games cost not a lot to manufacture. They're well balanced. They provide hours of entertainment, and they make good stocking stuffers. Again, particular ones I'm a big fan of. I've gotten a lot of use out of Kung Fu Fighting. I've gotten a lot of use out of Flux and its expansion packs. There's Goblin Machine one that's name is escaping me right now, but I'll put it up on the forums when it comes to me. But there are tons of great little, like I said, $10, $15 games. They're not big, and you'll get a lot of fun out of them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, we got a kind of lack if we got some very expensive board games, but not those take a lot of setup, those nice, really big
No,
board
not
games like House
Robo
on Money.
Racer or anything like that.
Yeah. Or Space Hog, that's ridiculous.
Oh, there's a great cooperative game, and it's cooperative called Forbidden Island that uses a sinking tile mechanic, and you have to, as a group, discover these treasures and then get them off of the island before it sinks around you. Difficult to play, extremely cooperative. You either all win or you all lose. That's been a lot of fun. I highly recommend that, Forbidden Island.
Cool. We got a few more shout outs for stocking stuffer ideas. One would be Octopus Pie. It's a book of it's a webcomic about some 20-something people living in Brooklyn, New York. But they published a compilation of it. It's very funny, very well drawn. You can go online, read through the archives if you like it. I would recommend it. It's good comedy writing, and it's not and it's well drawn. I mean, it's a rare combination. And so let's say One Dragon Age. I know that's a huge game. You probably all heard of it, but I've just gotten Dragon Age. They released the Ultimate Edition with all the DLC, and that's a ridiculously fun BioWare RPG with characters more quests than you can shake a dragon at or something.
I love BioWare.
Yeah, they do good work. So And then, of course, Eclipse Phase, Sunward, and GM Screen. I got these at Gen Con. I haven't really mentioned them on the show because I was wanting to run them first before I got a chance to, mention them on the show. But I've been reading the Sunward book, and the GM Screen for Eclipse Phase comes with an adventure that I've read through. It looks really good. I really want to run it soon. Sooner or later, hopefully over holiday break, I'll be able to do that. So I would look at that. It's full of ideas. You just read through like, oh, that's great. And then finally, the two last ones: Hero Lab, character creation software for Mutants and Masterminds, Call of Cthulhu, Pathfinder, a bunch of other systems.
It's great.
Yeah. Oh, you have Hero Lab too?
I played around with it, and I'm gonna sit down to buy it, and then I don't, and then I need it 10 days later. Like that's what happens every time. Hero Lab is great.
Yeah. It's a little pricey for getting. It's $30 for one. For the software and one rule set, but the other rule sets will cost you like $10 or $20 depending on what you get. But it saves a lot of time, especially with complex systems.
And that's something in the spirit of communism that your gaming table could all chip in $5 and use, because it's something that you can all use in order to help out at the gaming table.
Yeah. I actually did stat up some Pathfinder NPCs out of curiosity, and I could not have done that without. It just saves so much time compared to
it's
statting out
easily
manually.
As equivalent to Character Builder is for D&D, and again, it's third party, but it supports a variety of systems.
Yeah. I would not, if I'm going to do Mutants and Masterminds again, I'd definitely get the rules for that, because I'm not going to try and stat out Mutants and Masterminds.
The easiest system to stat out a character in, that system.
Yeah. Oh yeah, power arrays. They're so easy, and yeah.
He doesn't get it.
He doesn't understand the beauty of the Mutants and Mastermind system.
I'm trolling RJ because he's a fanboy of it.
The most important Christmas gift you can get you or that gamer you love this season, and if you don't get it, you clearly hate capitalism, is the Chessex pound of dice. Chessex making fine gaming dice for I don't know how many years, but a lot. Chessex pound of dice. It's a pound of dice. You get a pound of fucking dice.
It's enough dice to murder someone with.
If you got hit in the head with a pound of dice, it hurt. You'd go down.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
You could
Pound in the dice bag.
Yeah, bludgeon someone to death with
I don't know. Pounding the dice bag sounds dirty.
That was
Cody
why
probably knows what it is.
That's why I said it.
Probably involves someone's taint.
Seriously, though, Chessex pound of dice. Go buy it. Chessex has a website. It looks like it was made in 1984, but it works.
All right, let me write that in. All right. And then finally, I'm just going to mention again A Dirty World. I know I mentioned it in the previous episode, but really, that's been the single best new game for us that that we just started with
5.5 hours last night,
And that was
Yeah.
part 2.
Yeah. It's a great system. One roll engine, Greg Stoll's. Its mechanics are ridiculously innovative. They're a little abstracted sometimes, but it's a great system, and I love it. And we'll be doing Warfield Noir type stuff with it sooner or later. So it's too good not to use. So yeah. So I guess that's all the shout outs for that. And of course, we wouldn't be the show without an anecdote at least. Now I have one from a Frederick Bjarnson. I hope I'm not mispronouncing that horribly. At the bottom.
Yeah, I can't help you with that.
Yeah.
If it was Bjornsson, I would be fine, but it's got an A in it, so it's Bjarnson.
Yeah. I'm thinking
Bjarnason.
I hope that
It looks added vowels, Thomas.
Anyways,
Bjarnason. That's
hello, Tom and Ross. I've been listening
Hi.
to your show for a couple of years now and quite enjoyed both the episodes and the actual plays. You guys have been steadily honing your podcast skills and gotten really good. Plus, you tend to know what you're talking about most of the time. Yeah. One thing I've noticed is most of your anecdote listeners send you horror stories about their bastard GM. So I decided to send you my anecdote of the bastard GM, but this is a bastard I like. A bastard that ambushed me with a prophecy. There's actually a lot of backstory to this, so bear with me. Story title, Consumed by Power. This all happened quite a few years ago. I just started playing GURPS after playing other role-playing systems for a few years. This particular game, it was the GURPS Banestorm fantasy setting. I was playing a paladinish character who took a crossbow to the head. Not the arrow, but the actual crossbow. The character was running down a corridor, and I was mentally getting ready to have him quickly finishing off a mook that had missed his one shot at the character. Melee ensued, and the mook, with terror in his eyes, tried to club my character with the crossbow. The GM rolled the dice out in the open. 1-1-2, critical hit. Then the location, 1-1-1, brain, effect, triple damage. One dead paladin coming up. GURPS is fun this way. That's one way of describing it. Yeah. So I cried a bit the man another character. This one was a magic-using Spanish Inquisition guy, a mage who felt that due to the events in his past, his soul was doomed to hell. So he's willing to do anything at all for what he saw as the greater good, since he was going to hell anyway.
The greater good.
Yeah, the greater good. The end justifies the mean was very much his motto. And at the end was the will of the church. He went on to do such thing as clubbing an elderly man to death because the old man was working as a butler to someone who might be a vampire. The might was italicized, so that's important, you know. There's Schrodinger's vampire, you know. Character, along with his merry men, read other PCs, went on to do adventurous things, as one does. In this case, trying to find out who stole the body of my earlier character out of the family crypt. We didn't find the body, but instead ended up on the trail of the big bad evil guy who had stolen it. But more importantly, the BBEG was trying to acquire a pair of artifacts, the orbs of life and death. The exclamation point mark is not optional. Long point, slightly shorter. We thwarted the big bad evil guy by getting the orb of death. We never dared use it. So my character, you know, so on with the story. Having our grubby little hands on one orb, we the party were trying to get to the second orb before the big bad evil guy did. This led on some merry chases around the world, and we finally went in the tent of a fortune teller, as well as telling us where the other orb was. The GM also had her prophesize about my character. It was as follows: beware not to be consumed by power. And at this point, I think the GM decided to ambush my character. So now that we knew where the orb was, there was a big race with us and the evil guy into a desert. Into some rooms to get the orb of life. Again, with the exclamation point. Very important. Really long story, slightly shorter. We eventually found said ruins. I met Jesus. Okay, probably not Jesus, but someone very much like him. Lying Jesus? I don't know. Narnia Jesus? I guess using the orb of life
Narnia,
too much pushes you towards
now.
altruism and goodness. So soon after that, the Jesus looked like passes away quietly in his sleep. There were no characters involved in his death. Incredible, I know. We then got our grubby little hands on the orb of life, just to realize that while we slept, the orb of death had been stolen from us. While the party's running around trying to figure out what happened to the evil orb, someone shows up in my camp. It's my ex-character, the paladin from the start of the story, except now he is an undead abomination. Guess the big bad evil guy tried out the orb of death. The undead paladin is also wearing full plate mail. The rest of us were wearing robes or loincloth only. This is the deep desert, remember? So now the party was in a bit of trouble. The fighting starts, and right away, the undead paladin proceeded to deck our tank character in one blow. Broke his leg. GURPS is fun that way. Again, I don't think fun means what you think
Excuse me while I cry and rock myself in the corner. GURPS.
Yeah.
GURPS.
Fetal position.
GURPS critical hits. I mean, wow. Again, party's in a heap of trouble. The undead paladin starts advancing on the remaining two characters. We start screaming like little girls and run. But as you might recall, we are in the some ruins in the desert. There's nowhere to go but a hot, thirsty death in the wasteland of the desert. So I decided that this is the time for the Inquisitor to use the Orb of Life. Now, the Orb of Life does not really have any offensive capabilities. That's what the other orb is for. So I go over the list of spells and finally come up on one to use. I look at my GM and say, the Inquisitor uses the Orb to cast Resurrection on the Undead Paladin. Now, at this point, a little explanation of GURPS magic is needed. GURPS spells has power cost. Power cost comes out of the character's fatigue, and when the character runs out of fatigue, he starts to burn hit points. Cost of the resurrection spell is about 360 points. My Inquisitor had about 20 fatigue points at the time, would have a chance of drawing, and had about 20 hit points of damage left. You do the math. Being new to GURPS, I had no idea what the power cost of the resurrection spell was. I also didn't know that the orbs did not supply their own power. So when I told the GM I cast the resurrection spell, the GM looked at me with a grin and said, the Inquisitor is consumed by power. There's a big flash and nothing left of him except the smoking sandals and his robe. Ambushed by prophecy. I tells you, but at least I did manage to resurrect the paladin. End. Now a shout out. I'm surprised you haven't mentioned this before. The Unspeakable Vault of Doom. It's a really good Call of Cthulhu comic strip. I have heard of it. I just haven't mentioned it before, and I don't know why. Thanks for a great short. Try and keep it up. Frederick Bjornsson. Yes, it's a real name, in parenthesis. He had to point that out just to mention that. So now I want to know if the paladin was...
It's Bjarnason. There's an A in there.
So it is, Tom.
Okay.
I was correct.
I'm sure I'll get an email.
It was statistically likely to happen sometime, Tom.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Exactly.
You see, what I want to know is if the paladin was still evil after being resurrected. I mean, being an undead abomination, that might cause you to, rethink your moral viewpoints. Your moral.
I don't know. Our group would be like, I'm dead now. great.
Yeah.
Frederick, did you get to then play the Paladin since you're Inquisitor?
Yeah, that would be the best PC transition ever.
That
My
would be
character-
the best PC transition.
My character's dead. Well, I played the character I just brought back to
Because
life.
then that means your GM isn't a bastard; he's a mad genius.
Yeah, that's
And you must respect and fear him.
yeah.
No, we don't do that with Ross, though.
No, because I'm a purpose author. And I'm blah, blah, blah. Clearly, I'm
On that
mad.
note.
Yeah, exactly. With that note, so that episode, this ends episode 52.
I
Holiday
wanted to
Dash.
do an anecdote.
Oh, you do have an anecdote?
I do. I have an anecdote.
I didn't know. Oh.
All right, well, just keeping it going.
Yeah.
Anyone who's played a game with me knows that I've been GMing knows that I am a lethal GM. I'm not the kind of GM where, because there's a fine balance. There's the players are never in any danger, and they're just awesome people of awesomeness. And while that's fun for a while, it gets old real quick. And then the other end of it is like, oh, our level 1 D&D characters. GM, let's go take a walk through the Golem Forest.
I would go through the Golem Forest because I don't want to see the Golem Forest.
No, you don't want to go through the Golem
I
Forest.
do.
You're level 1.
They could be nice golems.
So I am a fan of what I call the noose and scissor method. Much like Moose and Squirrel, it's the noose and scissor method. I like to give my characters enough rope to hang themselves and make sure that there are scissors around in case they can figure out how to use them. So one of my in terms of the noose method, in terms of giving people enough rope to hang themselves, is something that I've used in great effect in many games that no player can resist, and that is the big red button.
Oh yes, the big red button.
The big red button. Let me explain how the big red button works. All the big red button needs to do to mess with your player's day is exist. It's a big red button. Ross, we're gaming right now. There's a big red button. You're trapped in a room. There's a big red button. What do you do?
I push it immediately.
You push it immediately. You're in a room. Guess what? Now sand is falling. This is actually
I
happening.
push it again.
I have had players fear the big red button and argue and yell at each other and be at each other. If you're going to push the button, I'm going to kill you. And someone will always impulsively push the button. I've screwed with the mechanic of the big red button. I've used the big red button twice in the same scene. The room's filling up with sand. The button is still there. Push the big red button again.
Yeah.
Suddenly a passage opens up and you can escape, but you wouldn't know because you should be afraid of the big red button. What if you push the big red button and it got worse? Because players, it can always get worse. And again, the point of the big red button, or any mechanic similar to the big red button, is to screw with the players. I have concocted elaborate shell games wherein if the players play the game that I'm throwing out there, they're only going to screw themselves more. The only winning move is not to play. And that's when...
Thank you, Professor Falcon.
That's when your players are going to surprise you. We did a Skype game that is ongoing but has not on-gone for a while. That was...
Is on-gone?
Yeah, on-gone is also now a word.
Pulpitude.
Pulpitude and on-gone. Where in my players were the first metahumans on the planet, and some people were clearly working to make this a reality and wanted control, obviously, over their new shiny metahumans. And so several opportunities presented themselves where rival companies could possibly be the savior of these metahumans. Unfortunately, the players didn't do their research because those were wholly owned subsidiaries of the company in question. Again,
Snap.
the big red button. You got a card from someone who says he's going to save your life. You're going to dial the number.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, in terms of bastard GMs, I'd like to think I'm one. And my primary...
Are you recording these games?
Yes.
Okay.
I recorded some of them. One or two of them I haven't recorded. The problem is I need better recording equipment. For some reason, my mic really doesn't like to stay... I have a third-party mic. It's a peripheral, and it for some reason the connection is wonky, and it's...
We should have some of the players try and record too, then you can post them to the RPPR Community Actual Play Podcast. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's I posted one or two of them in there,
Okay.
and that's actually the specific game I just mentioned. But literally, sometimes the classics are the best, and for me, the classic is always there's a big red button and we don't know what it does.
Yeah. All right. And again, red is a holiday color. So, Christmas color. I'm sorry. We're not warring on Christmas. Christmas is great. Bill O'Reilly, please don't kill me in my sleep.
Although Jason is an RPPR player, and we'd like to wish him a happy Hanukkah, which just ended, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't. So yeah, it's okay. Holidays. Yeah, screw it. We're inclusive or something. So. This has been episode 52, Mad Holiday Dash, and